For 47 days, I've been sober. From day one of being a 40-year-old, I decided to pull up stumps on my drinking and have a period where I am not looking for beer to make myself feel good, to socialize, to de stress. In fact, I'm doing the opposite. I'm embracing all those emotions coming into my body, all without alcohol. And this has been a big change for me. And it all came about on my 40th. Got a few different gifts, and a couple of those gifts were beer. In one case, it was a 4 pack or 6 pack of beer. The other case, it was a whole carton of beer. And I said to my wife during the day, I said, it's my 40th birthday. Why am I getting beer as gifts? And she said, well, Simon, that's because that's what people know you for. They know that you like beer, that you like drinking. And so that's what they get you. And I felt really empty about that. I'm like, wow, I'm 40 years old and that's how people look at me. And this sucked. I'm going to be honest with you. It really did suck. And it was kind of like the straw that broke a camel's back in terms of me actually thinking about this for quite some time. In the last few months, I've been thinking about having a period of time without beer, actually. And I've been not really liking the groggy feeling after drinking beer, and I've been getting really anxious after a night on the beer. Did I say something to someone? Did I do something? I'm not getting drunk or anything. Maybe a couple of cases I was, but not outrageous or anything. But these are the thoughts that were going through my mind. Or did I get onto social media and leave a comment somewhere that I don't really like today? It's getting too many cravings on the weekends, but also during the week as well. It was not just a weekend thing anymore. It was during the week, trying to manage stress as well. And one thing in particular was my kids were starting to associate me with beer a lot more often as well, saying things like, Daddy, hey, Daddy, do you want a beer? Or, Daddy, do you need a beer? You finish your day off work. And these little comments from my kids was something I don't really love hearing from them. Some guys out there, they might laugh and go, oh, yeah, my son goes to the bar fridge and gets me a beer. And I've trained him to do so. I've never been that kind of guy. And in fact, I don't want my son to do that for me. So when my kids connect beer with me, it's something that really turns on some alarm bells for me. So what I did on my first day of being a 40-year-old, so 40 plus one, is my wife actually took all the beer out of the fridge for me. She knew that I had committed to having a period without some beer. So she took the beer out of the fridge because I know in myself that if the beer's in the fridge, it's going to be a lot more, I guess, appealing for me to go and grab one when I'm in my moment of pain that I need a beer. But on the opposite, I wouldn't drink hot beer. And so since that day, for the last 47 or so days, at the time of recording, which is on the 6th of October as well, is that beer has sat in the garage on the ground in a box and I haven't touched it. In fact, I barely look at it, which has been really good. I've been really grateful and proud of myself for not caving in and putting those beers back in the fridge. And so 47 days in, I'm actually feeling really good. And I'm glad I made that decision. And there's been a few cases where I've been tested. For example, going down to the local cafe, we went down for dinner one night, which is usually a time when I would have a beer. Didn't feel at all obliged to have a beer. In fact, I had a soda and lime, which was really refreshing. I got to be really present with the kids and the wife and go home and not feel groggy. It's fantastic. And go to bed, at a good time and not feel groggy during my sleep and waking up feeling good the next day. But a big one was AFL Grand Final Day. And for years and years and years, in fact, ever since I started drinking, AFL Grand Final Day has been attributed with getting plastered. It starts early. It's a great day. Love my AFL. Love all the lead up, the build up. My team hasn't been in there very often. And the last time we did, we got absolutely pumped. But this is how I associate AFL Grand Final Day. And so this year I decided not to drink. In fact, I did the same last year, but last year I was fortunate in the fact that Geelong absolutely smashed the Swans. And so the game was pretty much over at half time. And we happened to be with some other family friends of ours. And we took the kids down to the swimming pool at half time. But also as a 40-year-old, I've started to reflect on this relationship I've had with alcohol for so long. And I've been talking about it more. And I think I've been encouraged by some of the guests that I've had on the show who've told their own stories about alcohol addiction or drug addiction or gambling addiction. And it's made me think about my own relationship with alcohol. Now, I don't look at myself as an addict, but maybe I've got an addiction issue. Maybe I really struggle to say no and put the beer down. And to some people that might say, yeah, you're an addict, but I don't associate with that word. For me, there's a lot of stigma associated with that word. It's not something that I like to use very often, particularly about myself. And so I prefer to use, I struggle with alcohol. And for a long time, it's actually been hard for me to say that out loud. I've known it internally, but not really say it out loud. And so I've been reflecting on my relationship with alcohol, and it all started as probably around that 14, 15-year-old mark. It was an end of football trip away with the team that I played for. Someone grabbed a carton of beer and we all shared in it. And it was fun. I'm not going to lie. I had an absolute blast. And in fact, some of the people after the camp came back into their own social circles. And when we'd come back together, they'd say, Simon, remember that camp? That was so much fun. You were so jovial. You were out of your shell. You were someone who was brought to life by a beer. And it was a shit beer at that. It was a VB. So sorry for anyone who loves VB, but it tastes like piss. And I took that and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I like this positive reinforcement. And so every time we would go drinking, I would make an effort to get, pretty drunk with the hope that other people would see me and go, yeah, Simon, that's so cool. You're so funny. And that was important at the time because it was right at the height of when my OCD was ramping up. And internally, my brain could just never switch off. And I was feeling so down and depressed. And so drinking gave me a coat of armor. It helped slow the thoughts, slow the brain. It allowed me to relax. It allowed me to have fun. It allowed me to socialize with people that I would not normally socialize with. As mental health issues for me really took hold, I became more and more socially introverted. I was scared all the time, and so drinking allowed me to not be scared. And this continued. I continued to do this every party, every weekend or every other weekend, every grand final day, every road trip, every holiday. And it just didn't stop for 25 years. Now, I'm not saying I drank every day because I didn't. In fact, for the first, I don't know, 15 or so years, it was purely on the weekends. And it wasn't necessarily every week, but usually it would be a weekend, a Friday, Saturday night, me watching football or doing something, going to a party, whatever it is, involved drinking. But then over time, what happened is I needed more and more beer to feel that wave of joy, of relaxation, of calmness, of safety. And so I would end up being one of those guys who would be at the table at dinner, for example, and look around the table, everyone's got about half of their drinks still full. I'd be polishing off that first beer. And in fact, Simon Bartz and I shared this on his episode of the Mindful Men podcast too. He was doing similar, behaviors. And for a long time, I didn't really think that was an issue. And people would say, Simon, I think you're drinking too fast or you're drinking too much. And I would deflect and say, no, I'm okay. I'm just letting my hair down. I use this excuse. I'm letting my hair down. I'm having a good time. It's okay. But as time went on and I entered into the workforce, had a corporate career in the public service, alcohol, yes, would let me go to those Friday night social drinks. But what it would do in response is send me on a whirlwind spiral of OCD rumination. And so what turned from having fun as a kid and everyone laughing if I got a bit stupid drunk and it really encouraged me for the next time, as an adult, it kind of went the opposite way. And so I would go out to a Friday night drinks in my workplace and I would drink too fast and drink too much. In some cases, I've been known to get up on the dance floor and make a big show of myself. Internally, at the time, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling good. I can see people laughing and smiling. And I think, yes, this is that encouragement that I had when I was a teenager. And this is good. I'm going to keep doing it. But then what would happen is I'd go home, fall asleep, pass out, and wake up the next morning in a world of pain. Now, I'm not talking hangover because I've never really experienced hangovers. I'm talking about my brain would go into overdrive. And so what it would do is it would replay the night over and over and over again because I feared that I might have said something or done something the night before that may have offended someone, which could cause me to get into trouble, maybe with my boss or with somebody else, or cause conflict with another person because I hate conflict. I'm a runner, not a fighter. And so I would ruminate on this over and over and over again. And I would ruminate on it so much that it forced my memory of the night to become distorted. In fact, parts of the night, or if not the whole night, would become so distorted that I didn't know what was true of what actually happened compared to what my brain was trying to tell me happened. And what I've come to learn is that this is part of my obsessive compulsive disorder. This is what they call pure O, pure obsessions. And the obsessions are around having to continually replay things or events or situations in our minds, checking that everything will be okay, that we didn't cause harm, we didn't cause distress, we're not involved in some sort of issue that's going to blow up the next day. And this is a really tricky OCD, I guess, trait to have, is because it's not overt, it's all played in the mind. And so what would happen is, to alleviate that, I would sit through days of rumination, go back to work on, say, the Mondays or Tuesdays, see the people that I think maybe I offended that person. They haven't said anything. I would kind of sneakily check in with them. Hey, how you going? What's going on? And if they responded to me in a positive way, the relief. Nothing happened. I didn't say anything that I shouldn't have said. I didn't do anything that I shouldn't have done. This went on for about 10 years, if not longer, and nothing ever did happen. I didn't ever go to one of these parties and get drunk or do something to the point where it was going to offend someone, or I was going to get in trouble the next day at work or lose my job or whatever. And so I'd always catastrophize. I'd always go to, I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose status in the world, or people are going to look at me differently. It never happened, or at least it didn't happen that I know about. Sure, some people might have seen me on the nights and maybe they've changed their perception of me, but no one's ever confronted me and said, Simon, you did this. What's going on? And so this all played out in my mind. This is an anxious mind talking here. And every time it would happen, my wife would see it coming. She'd say, Simon, it's happening again. You're doing it again. And in fact, it was happening so much in 2010. That's the period of time up until 2012. In that 2-year bracket, when we lived in Tasmania, for example, is when my wife really started to notice this and said, Simon, you need help. You need to go and talk to someone about this. You need strategies. And maybe it was around the alcohol, but I think a lot of it was underlying mental illness that hadn't been diagnosed yet. And so that's part of the reason I did go and see that GP in 2012, was to talk about some of this stuff, to wonder why I would get myself into these situations and constantly replay events in my mind until they become distorted. But what happened is I got into therapy and we never really talked about that stuff. We didn't talk about OCD, definitely. Yes, I was diagnosed, but no therapist targeted the OCD. We talked a bit about alcohol and said, oh, you just got to cut back. You'll be all right. Just cut down. You'll be okay. And for little bits and pieces, I did cut back. And there might have been periods where for a few weeks I didn't drink, but I'd always come back to the drink. I'd reward myself and say, I've been off the drink for 2 or 3 weeks. I deserve a drink. Or I would reward myself for a hard day's work or a hard week's work. Or if I'm really stressed, I would use it to numb. And so in the latter part of my 30s, it was all around numbing. I would drink to numb. And it got to a point very recently where I just got sick of that. I got sick of doing this drinking to feel numb. I started to reflect and go, you know what? What's going on? So what's the underlying things that you're not dealing with that are being fueled by this drinking habit that you've got? And so as I've got older, and social work's helped me. As I became a social worker, it helped me to critically reflect on that stuff. But also as I started targeting the OCD and really working on that, I've realized that drinking alcohol puts a Band-Aid on my pain. And so what I really need to do is work on the pain so that I don't have to put the Band-Aid on. And so on my 40th birthday, this, I guess, all came to a point, and it's something that, again, I actually had thought about it the couple of nights before, and I didn't really feel like drinking on my 40th, but I encouraged myself to do that, say, let's just go out with one big bang. And it wasn't a big bang. Yes, I'd had quite a few, and I feel maybe I was slurring my words by the end of the night, but it wasn't ridiculous like it was, in my teens or early 20s. But what's happened since then, in the last 47 days, on the day that I'm recording, is yeah, I am feeling good and I don't have those urges or the cravings that I thought I was going to have this far in. Yes, they've come and gone, and particularly around the AFL Grand Final day, but I've got through and it's been really good. I haven't felt the urge to drink. And one of the things that have been encouraging me to keep going with this is something that Simon Bart said in his episode of the Mindful Man podcast, was if we don't place value on drinking, then that can help us to not drink. We stop doing things that we don't place value in. And so I've been reaffirming this in my own mind more recently. And what's happened since then is that the kids have stopped linking me with beer. They say, Dad, you want a water? Or you want your cacao? I'm really digging ceremonial cacao at the moment. Or do you want a coffee? And this is making me feel good. And so I wanted to share this as a way of me saying to myself and committing to myself that it's time to have a break from beer. I'm 47 days in, And my next focus is getting through Christmas. And that's going to be a big challenge because we're going back to Tasmania for a holiday and, bit of a drinking culture down there with the people that I hang around. But I'm going to focus in on not putting pressure on myself, focusing on my wife and kids and my values as well. And I know I can get through that. And then I know that if I can get through Christmas, and I'm pretty confident I will, I want to push it further and further and further. And ultimately, if I can get 1 year without beer, I think that'll be a pretty amazing feat. But I'm not going to put that pressure on me